Hello everyone and welcome to NFL Discussion. I'm your host and NFL enthusiast Dougie Doug. In today's episode I'm going to be discussing Thursday Night Football, Week 17 of the 2023 season, Jets versus Browns, and this was the final Thursday Night Football game of the season. And with that, we'll go ahead and get right into the action, starting with the New York Jets. And this season has been an unfortunate one for the Jets. They traded for Aaron Rodgers in the offseason, and unfortunately 4 plays in, he tears his Achilles and ends up being out the entire season. And there is a question to be asked about this Jets team, and that is, say Aaron Rodgers hadn't torn his Achilles, how competitive would this team be with him under center? But before we answer that question, let's talk about the Jets' performance tonight. Trevor Siemian had certainly an elevated stat line, yardage-wise too. It looked pretty decent, but Trevor Siemian pretty much opted for checkdowns to Breece Hall, which was, good news for anybody who played him in fantasy. But pretty much all the other Jets pass catchers were kind of left out to dry. Siemian continued his checkdown ways in this one, targeting Breece Hall 9 times. He threw 10 passes to Garrett Wilson and another pass-heavy game script. He threw a terrible pick 6 in the first quarter, his only truly bad play of the game. Siemian has hardly been great in his past 2 starts for the Jets, but he has been functional, and that's all you can really ask for of a Jets quarterback, is that they be functional. And if Zach Wilson clears concussion protocol, then it will most likely be Wilson taking over again to close out the season. Breece Hall has had 21 catches over Siemian's 2 starts. Against Cleveland, he handled 13 out of 15 running back carries, and had a couple impressive tackle-breaking runs, finishing with a stat line of 13 carries for 84 yards and 9 receptions for 42 yards. Garrett Wilson caught 5 of 10 targets for 50 yards, and if I remember correctly, I think he made it over the 1,000-yard mark on the season, which, if he did do that, that's impressive considering how shoddy the quarterback play has been, and a testament to how great of a wide receiver he is so early on into his career. Wilson led the team in targets in this game, and as usual, he appeared frustrated by the lack of quality targets, this time from Trevor Siemian, who spent most of the night checking down. On the plus side, Wilson now has 25 targets in Siemian's 2 starts for New York, so it could be worse, and maybe it will be, because he does get the New England defense in Week 18, and if Bill Belichick makes him the focus, then he's probably not going to have a very productive game. But back to the original question here, will the Jets be competitive with Aaron Rodgers under center? I don't think so. Maybe to an extent. I would say, yeah, they would be competitive to an extent, but I think you gotta look at Rodgers last season in Green Bay, where that team just wasn't overly competitive, and Aaron Rodgers didn't play good that season. I think he threw double-digit interceptions. It came down to the end of the season in Lambeau, beat the Lions, and you're in, and he loses that game. I mean, maybe they would be a bit more competitive, but with the way that offensive line is playing, I don't know. And the defense too, New York has a good defense, but it certainly gets exposed, and it did in the first half of this game. So would the Jets still be in it? Would they have been mathematically eliminated? All I can say is Aaron Rodgers would give them a chance. How much of a chance, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to speculate, because there is talent on that offense in Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. But I think you do have to question the coaching as well too. How effective is it? But I guess we'll find out next season, because everything's going to remain the same, and they're just going to pretend that this season was an anomaly. So I guess we'll see if they're right about that one. Cleveland Browns. So they won a sloppy game and clinched a playoff spot thanks to some explosive plays, and Joe Flacco had a solid first half, but a less than solid second half. So overall, uneven performance. That certainly is something worth watching going forward. But nonetheless, he keeps the momentum rolling and the wins for the Browns. Flacco eclipsed the 300-yard mark for the 4th straight game, with 296 of those yards coming in the blistering first half, in which Flacco and the Browns torched an elite New York secondary. Cleveland's offense, missing Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore, was subsequently shut down in the second half. Flacco once again targeted David Njoku relentlessly, connected with the big tight end 6 times for 134 yards. He did have a few errant throws in the second half. Jerome Ford shredded a usually stout New York front 7 in the first half, regular, gaining 6 and 7 yards on early down carries. He caught a scramble drill pass in the second quarter and evaded 3 Jets defenders for his 50-yard score that sent the Browns fans in attendance into a frenzy. Well, more of a frenzy than they already in. Before that, on the game's first drive, he got a 12-yard pass for a score. Like the entire Browns offense, Ford did almost nothing in the second half, and Kareem Hunt closed out the game in the fourth quarter. Ford had 12 of the team's 26 running back carries on the day, and he will be in an excellent spot next week against a burnable Bengals rush defense. David Njoku was wide open throughout the game, or right up to the first half, and ran wild against a befuddled New York secondary. In short, he was unstoppable as the main target with Amari Cooper sidelined, although he did fumble the football. He's had 40 targets over the past 4 games. So, as I talked about, Joe Flacco once again leads his team to victory, but he threw another interception, this one that resulted in a pick 6, and had the Jets been a more competitive team, that probably could have came back to bite him. So the interceptions are certainly an issue with Joe Flacco, but when he's accurate, when he's accurate, you can look at some of the passes to David Njoku, or even to Jerome Ford and Elijah Moore, who caught a touchdown pass. When he's accurate, those things are spot on and great throws, but he has those other throws where his arm kind of just gets the best of it, where he just kind of trusts in his arm a bit too much, and the accuracy isn't there, and the defender ends up picking it off. But even though it was a sloppy second half for this Browns team, they are resilient. They are refusing to let injuries to so many players, a ridiculous amount of players, hold them back from success. It's unlikely the Browns win the NFC North. The Ravens are just a more complete team, and healthy team. So that's kind of out of the question here, but Cleveland will be going on the road for a playoff game. Who will they face? Unknown. Will they make a deep playoff run? It's hard to say. It's inspiring what they've been able to do, and their defense is one of the best in the NFL, and usually defense is good enough to bail out the offense despite the mistakes, although they probably will want to clean up the mistakes, because Flacco had some fumbles. I think Pierre Strong had a fumble, David Njoku had a fumble, and then you had the interceptions as well. So definitely want to clean up those turnovers and not put too much on their defense, because even though their defense has been consistently great, there have been some games where their defense got caught, and when the defense was not performing at a great level, it did not turn out well for the Browns. So we'll see how the Browns progress into the postseason, but it's still a good thing that they got in. I would say they've earned it. They've earned their playoff spot, and we'll see what they can do. And with that will conclude this episode of NFL Discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button down below.